Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the February 24th, 2015 Board of County Commissioners work session. And we are a little short today. Patty Clapper and Rachel Richards are both at other events today, but we have three of us here, so we have a quorum. And today we're going to talk more about the airport, the East Side Terminal Area, Environmental Assessment, Community Input Committee, and Public Workshop. And John Kinney's here to lead us through this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, as well as the other county commissioners. My name is John Kinney, the airport director here in Aspen. I have sitting immediately to my left Rick Dunkelberg of the Mead and Hunt group, as well as Kate Andrus, also with Mead and Hunt. There are two lead consultants on this environmental assessment process. And this, as you said, Mr. Chair, this is the first environmental assessment, and it's specific to the east side portion of the airport. So only that area that deals with the terminal building, potential transit center, and potential of relocating an existing FBO to the same side of the field, and some circulation elements. So this presentation today is an update to a previous meeting that was held this month, where we committed to you to come back and brief you on the committee that we had formed, as well as our first public workshop on the environmental assessment. So the Community Input Committee has been formed. We held our first meeting yesterday at the Airport Operations Center from 1 to 3. Attendance was robust given the weather. We actually had 9 people call in, and so they could not make it. They were stranded elsewhere trying to just get back to Aspen from around the country. And then we had a few others that simply could not make it. But we had approximately 30 people, just shy of 30 people who showed up. It was a very robust engagement, and you'll see going around the room here, we got a variety of boards, and the relationship to the yellow stickies to that of the boards is the yellow stickies represent, there's approximately 300 of them in this room surrounding us, of these yellow stickies represent the community's actual input in the different boards. But Rick and Kate will be going into that process here in just a minute. We want to do a little bit of a refinement to the Community Input Committee and specifically to the public workshop. We'll talk about that in terms of changing the venue and trying to increase the public's participation, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. So I'll turn it over now to Rick and Kate, and they will walk you through the presentation that was actually presented to the Community Input Committee last night and some of the summations of all the remarks.
Thank you, John. As John said, I'm Rick Dunkelberg, and this is Kate Andrus, and we're your consultants on this particular project. The objective of today's meeting and presentation is to talk about the proposed role of the Community Input Committee, what we presented yesterday, present a summary of the materials, and this is what you see on the wall of the input we got from both the committee meeting and the public visioning meeting, which was held yesterday evening, and then discuss the next steps. The presentation I'm going to give is the presentation that we gave yesterday. So picture yourselves as members of the CIC, and this is what you would have seen yesterday. The Community Input Committee role was presented, and basically it means that the committee was created with input from those who asked to participate in the process. We have a lot of people that wanted to be part of the committee and be part of the process, from as well as interested parties throughout the Roaring Fork Valley. This is not just specific to the Aspen area. It contains a broad range of individuals from Pitkin County, the city of Aspen, Snowmass Village, its distinct neighborhoods, airport users, tenants, etc. So it's a wide spectrum committee with a lot of different people on it. The committee will serve as a conduit for community input, provide comments to the consultants and to this body as far as input on this study. It's not a voting committee. We won't take votes on anything. We'll just take input. The committee will build on the East Side concepts of the approved conceptual development in the airport master plan. In other words, we're not starting from scratch. We're building on the concepts presented in that master plan. The BOCC is the decision-making body. The Federal Aviation Administration is the approving federal agency which makes the final determination on the EA, the environmental assessment that we are preparing pursuant to federal guidelines. And they also will provide funding. Responsibilities of the committee. Number one, we want everybody to participate. We want as much participation as we can get. Bring feedback from their specific communities and interest groups back to the meetings we have to give us to the consultant. Ask questions, provide input. We want them to ask hard questions and provide as much input as they can. And we want to encourage active involvement for all the members. And hopefully they'll continue throughout the process. We set some ground rules for the committee. One, we're going to start on time and we're going to end on time. One person speaks at a time. We listen to understand what we're all saying. We will honor diversity of opinions. We will question the issue, but not the person raising the issue. Disclose any financial interests as they relate to the airport. And when making a public statement, members will speak only for themselves and not for the committee as a whole or for any other member. Members of the public attending any of the committee meetings will be given an opportunity to speak at the close of committee business, and time will be allotted for that on our agenda. And then we went through the purpose of the environmental assessment, since this is basically a new project and new process for a lot of members on this committee. And so the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, requires consideration of the environmental consequences of a federal action before that action is taken. The environmental assessment is prepared to determine if a significant environmental impact may occur. We identify those if there are any. Provides an in-depth review of the environmental impacts for the proposed action and alternatives to those actions. So we'll be looking at alternatives along with what we call the do nothing or no action alternative. What would happen if we didn't do anything?
Rick,
yes, sir.
I might interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
The term environmental assessment includes more than just environmental considerations. It includes some different economic considerations and whatnot. Could you briefly describe?
Yes, and I've got a slide in about 3 slides that goes through each one of those points.
Okay.
So you beat me to my thunder here.
Great.
Basically, the document is a disclosure document so that the people making the decision and the public will have all the information they need to make a rational decision. And then some background of the project, how we got to where we are today. The master plan recommended updates to the east side of the airport due to terminal area and east side deficiencies of existing structures and spaces. Apron issues as far as the air carrier apron is concerned, the way it basically slopes into the existing terminal building. Operational issues as far as congestion on the apron areas and the taxi lane are concerned on that side of the airport. And then runway connectivity issues, how we connect to the runway, where we connect, and what happens when there's a bottleneck. The master plan describes solutions to these issues based on guidance from this body and approval of this body of the concepts in the master plan. This EA will analyze the potential environmental impacts of the proposed and approved actions for the east side of the airport. Basically, the document consists of about 5 or 6 distinct chapters, and these are regulatory in nature in that each EA prepared for the FAA contains exactly these same chapters. One is a purpose and need. In other words, why are we doing it and what is the project? What is the need for the project? 2 are alternatives. Alternatives to the proposed action and the do-nothing alternative that we will evaluate. We then identify the affected environment. In other words, what's there now? What are the environmental baseline conditions we'll be looking at? And then we analyze the environmental consequences of the proposed action and the feasible alternatives to that action. And then we identify any mitigation measures that may be needed to mitigate those environmental impacts. Okay, the proposed action for this project is to prepare terminal area development, including a new terminal building, a transit center, ancillary auto parking, roadway improvements, apron improvements, FBO relocation, a noise wall, and then other ancillary projects. It's understood that all these won't happen at once. They'll be staged and they'll be phased. But these are the projects that will be covered in the environmental assessment. West Side development projects, which we're all aware of, will be addressed in a separate process with additional public involvement, and probably, hopefully, carrying on the same committee to help us look at the West Side. The concepts of the new terminal building will not change. In other words, the role of the airport doesn't change. We're not increasing the role of the airport for this project, and the types of aircraft operating at the airport do not change as a basis of upgrading the terminal and the terminal area. Those would occur when the West Side development happens, but not as a result of this project. And just to refresh your memory, there's a graphic of all the proposed projects as were approved in the airport master plan, and that's what we will be evaluating. And here's to your question, Steve. The categories that we will be evaluating are about 23, and they're shown on this slide, and they vary from air quality to cultural resources, compatible land use, construction impacts, economic impacts, socioeconomic impacts, wetlands, wild and scenic rivers. The only one that we will not be evaluating in depth will be coastal zone management elements, since we're not in a coastal zone area. But there are a whole lot of different categories that we will evaluate from an environmental impact standpoint. Not just natural resources, but human resources, economic resources, and how it affects that whole gamut of the environment as we refer to everything. Okay, the main part of our meeting yesterday was to initiate the visioning session, which we will use to help design and define concepts for the East Side. And as John said, we had about 30 people show up. We broke down into small groups and looked at specific elements, basically the terminal, but also kind of the whole area on how that would work. And Kate now is going to go through and summarize basically what all these hundreds of comments we received are, and then what we'll do next.
Thanks, Rick. So like John said, we had a lot of really great participation yesterday. You can see it around the room with your new decorations here. We've got about 300 comments up. So we just wanted to give you kind of a high level, some of the repeating themes that we saw in a lot of these comments. You can see over here we've got the 4 stations that we broke out and kind of did a facilitated group discussion on each one of these. Each one is really relative to kind of a design vision. What are we looking at for the East Side? And asking some questions to get that discussion started. So for the first one was sense of place. And this slide gives you just a little bit of an overlap on the general themes. We saw qualities, features, and an example of the types, we call them likes, the types of buildings that came up that people thought fit Aspen well. So in terms of the qualities, we heard maximizing the view of the natural environment. There's this quote, "Everyone has a window seat," which I think we really liked. The idea of bringing the outside in and embracing that. Panoramic, yet intimate, organic and warm, but not boxy. And also celebrating the arrival and departure experience. As you fly into Aspen, as you get off that plane, immediately having the feel that you're in Aspen. And that kind of also plays to that indoor-outdoor connectivity and a small town feel. So embracing kind of the feel that you have now at the terminal and bringing that forward. In terms of features, observation areas and exterior gathering places came up a lot. And in terms of likes, in terms of the buildings that people appreciated, the Airport Operations Center, the new music school came up, the Basalt Library, as well as the Woody Creek Community Center, the Jackson Hole Airport Terminal, the Palm Springs Terminal, and the Bozeman Airport Terminal. And as we go through these 4 stations, you'll see that there is quite a bit of overlap in some of these areas, and we'll kind of summarize that at the end. The second station was on sustainability, and the number one element that we heard in this is that they really want Aspen to be a leader in sustainability. So looking at education, operation, and embracing the newest technologies that we can kind of put into a terminal and into the east side as a whole was something that was really important to the folks. Here again, you see the outdoor connectivity being an important element, as well as connecting the airport to the communities that it serves. So, and then the last one is having it built for the long term. You know, making sure that it's right-sized and that it can last for a long time in the future. The third station was on neighborhood compatibility. And this was really asking the questions about the role of the community and also how to be a good neighbor and how it fits in with that. The first element is, again, that gateway experience. Knowing that people come in to the airport and as they step off the plane, they know that they're in Aspen. The idea of views from multiple kind of view sheds, being able to look out not just toward the airfield, but perhaps to other areas as well, seemed important. And also the ability to experience aviation. Noise and light sensitivities came up, and folks were really appreciative of the programs that the airport has already done, and just looking toward ways that we can embrace it in the future. We've got a noise barrier on the list of proposed projects, and they were definitely interested in bringing that forward throughout the process. Again, transportation options and connectivity to the communities, and for neighborhood compatibility, the element that came up was really the visual clarity between the connections, so that you have this ease of use so that people actually utilize it more. And then the final 2 are balanced and reflective of Aspen character, recognizing that the airport is the lifeline of the community, but we also need to kind of balance the growth with being a good neighbor. Then the last station was on passenger experience. And this was kind of broken out, the comments that we heard were broken out by kind of what we like and what we don't like. And the likes were really under the simplicity and efficiency side of things. They loved, being able to get out and walk within a short amount of time. The ease of access and the short distances at the existing terminal were really valued by the community. Keeping the old Aspen flavor, kind of the small community feel, was also really important. In terms of what we could do better, as we're looking toward a potential new terminal, convenience and comfort came up a lot. Having some space for amenities, availability of technology, and providing some comforts, especially during peak time and the excessive delay portions, came up in a lot of the comments. And then you see community connectivity came up again, having the Aspen-related experience and that outdoor feel was important for the passenger experience. So like I said, we kind of had some 4 large overlapping themes within all the stations and discussions that we had. And the number one, I would say, is balanced. Balancing that economic lifeline, the operational efficiency of the airport, with being a good neighbor and really fitting into the community here. So part of that is embracing the outdoors and having that gateway experience, and having actual physical connectivity to the communities through transportation elements. And then in terms of next steps, obviously we have a lot of comments around here. So going through, compiling them, creating, just re-looking at the overarching themes and what, we're going to bring forward from that is important. Like John said, we didn't have as great of a turnout at the public meeting in the evening as we would have liked. So while we got some great feedback during the committee meeting, we really feel that we need to do further outreach, bring the meeting into town so it's a little easier for access, and hope it doesn't snow on the day we have it. So we'd like to include a supplementary visioning session for the public here probably in the next month or so. So we'll get back to you with dates once we've got those sets. And then finally just reporting back to you and letting you know how it goes. Rick, do you have anything to add?
That's it. No, it was a very successful meeting. We got a lot of input, as you can see. People were very engaged. And it's more than what I was hoping to get. It's great input, very good committee. So we thank you for that.
We're just missing that dynamic public input, so
A
we're going
couple-
to retool and go after
Yeah, a couple of questions. So once you go back and try to compile all this information, then do you re-present this to this committee, or what's the status of the actual CIC?
Okay, after we go back and compile all of this information, we'll narrow it down to some useful, what we'll call just overarching concepts. We then go back to the committee and say, here's what we've learned from the last meeting we had. We've narrowed it down because there's a lot of overlap and combination. And here's how we as the architects and designers can incorporate some of these ideas that you've shared with us into a beginning concept. And then we'll get, again, input and discussion on that beginning concept. Then we'll take that information, go back, regurgitate it, look at it, analyze it, and then come back. And we'll narrow it down to where we come up with probably 2 concepts of what the terminal building and associated area around that will look like. 1-story, 2-story, kind of the sizing of what it will be. Then come back to you all again, and you know, you'll give us direction then on where to go, and if we need to go back, or if we can carry those 2 forward.
So then, because last time you talked about setting up 2 different committees, so this is a visionary committee, and the other committee is more of a technical committee. So the technical committee won't actually start until the visionary part is over, or how's that work?
Great question, George. We had so much committee input, and there was more of a desire of just stay together and move forward throughout the process instead of having one more maybe of a policy or interest as opposed to a subject matter expert. So we decided just to keep them all together because the dynamics played very well based on the amount of comments that we got. So we're planning on keeping them all together and just moving them forward, and then simultaneously to the CIC, the Community Input Committee, we'd also then, after each one of those meetings that evening, have the public workshops to get more public input.
Okay. And then last, when you talk about doing some more public meetings, outreach, you're going to have one in Aspen. I would also suggest you have one in Snowmass as well.
Okay.
Do you want us to explain Gensler, what they're doing right now, and data collection?
Yeah, we've got the Gensler is our prime architectural firm that will be doing the architectural concepts. They are in town yesterday, and they're still in town today, and they're doing a lot of one-on-one discussions with users of the terminal, the airlines, the rental cars, you know, the people that use the terminal other than the passengers, so we can gather their input also, and you know, put it all in the mix there. And then we will leave these boards up in the terminal building between meetings, so anybody that wants to comment on those can certainly comment. We'll fix up ways that we can get comments from the public, and then use those again in our reschedule of the first public workshop.
So we'll actually put one of those CR codes?
Yeah,
CR codes.
QR
CR codes on the each one of the boards so they can scan it with their smartphone and then be connected to the web and type in any of the comments or ask for questions right then and there. And then all this information that we are creating at the meetings, including the boards as well as agendas, will also be put on the web page at the airport. So it's a running total for them. And then we also have really a third group that is starting to emerge, and it's just those individuals who want to be put on a mailing list just to be kept abreast of what is happening. So we've got about 6 people on that list so far as well. So if people are interested in just receiving the information, contact us, and we'll be more than happy to put them on a list and email out the information to them.
Okay. Michael?
Is this the first time we've had public input on the airport?
For the environmental assessment?
No, just for our master plan. And so this is not the first time?
In terms of the master plan?
No, we've had, during the master planning process, we have lots of public input.
So you had, you have a timeline here on our package, you didn't put it up. But so the master plan had public input?
Yes, sir.
And then you mentioned the Western Maroon Creek plan, which really wasn't your, it was a community development, but there must have been community input on that,
Yes, sir.
too.
Yep.
And then the design guidelines,
There was community input on that.
was there community input on that?
Yes, sir.
And then we had a future air service study. Was there community input on that, too?
Yes.
So this is accumulation of that information and those public inputs going forward?
Yes, sir. And some of the people have been involved, some of the people on this committee have been involved all the way through.
So they have continuity
Yes.
with all the phases that
Yes.
we've had public input on.
And that also includes the public input we had for the runway extension EA and for the Fly Quiet program, which we developed with.
And so that predates the master plan update?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So there are people who, so they have a long history with airport affairs and
Several of them
airport
do.
development.
Yes.
So this is great. I really appreciate the efforts that you put into, and to learn that we've had input all the way along is good too. I think some of the members of the public don't realize how much input has been, from the public, has been put into this project.
Yes.
Like I'm, as you know, very, very new to town, maybe 10 weeks, but in speaking with John Peacock today, we were meeting with a community group. He described between the master plan and the phase 1, 2, 3 leading up to air service development, leading up to the environmental assessment, that there were a little over 80 public meetings. So very, very, very robust.
80 public meetings
Correct.
on since the master plan?
On the master plan and the phase 1, 2, and 3 of the airport development, air service development, types of aircraft, and then public input. 80 meetings.
And does that get incorporated in the environmental assessment as a sort of, this is preliminary to environmental assessment, but we have had this kind of community input?
It does to an extent. The master plan in particular, that is the basis for the environmental assessment, and all the community involvement and participation that went into developing those concepts, then we carry forward. That's the most significant document, because that outlined the future for the airport for the next 20 years. And as you remember, allocated space for certain developments. And so we're now building on that through this process to actually determine more specific inputs of those areas.
Great.
I always, when I think of these issues like sense of place and the neighborhood compatibility, passenger experience, all of that, I think of landing at the airport at St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, which I've flown into 3 times, into and out of. That's the gateway to the Virgin Islands, and it just is a very memorable experience where you walk down the steps out of the airplane onto the ground, then you walk across the tarmac into the building. And when you walk in the building, there's people greeting you with these little cups with Cruzon rum that they produce there in the Virgin Islands. And the whole thing is, it's a very warm climate with a temperature about 80 degrees all the time, day and night. So it's sort of an open air feeling, but it fits their climate, it fits their whole culture, and it's a very memorable experience landing there that I'll just never forget it, because it was so fun, and it started the trip off just perfectly.
Right.
And that's when I think of the Aspen experience landing here, I think of that same kind of experience, that people will remember it for the good things. We don't want them to remember it for the bad experience where, you know, there's a winter storm and their flight's delayed and they circle around the airport, or they circle around New Mexico forever or whatever. We don't want them remembering those kind of unpleasant experiences, but so that's kind of how I'm bouncing off the comments of the public, and just, you know, remembering my own experience on that, you know, very memorable airport that I've had the opportunity to fly in and out of. And I'd like to have that be the same, our end result here too.
You know, and the challenge is to make it a memorable experience and make the passenger comfortable when those things beyond our control do happen, and we need to accommodate those in the best way we can. You know, and still keep our, I mean, one of the major themes is the small town Aspen field. You know, that's, you're in Aspen, we want that to be carried out through the terminal.
Okay. Any other comments, board? Sounds like we're off to a good start, and it sounds like the dynamic of the committee was really good. As long as if we can keep them enthusiastic and engaged the whole time, I think that goes a long way towards being successful at this.
Thank you.
All right.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give us just a minute to get this stuff out of here.
Yeah, no problem.
Or would you just rather us come back?
Yeah, would you rather?
We could take a 5-minute break and let you take it down, and then,
Okay, good. Thank you.
yeah, and that way we can all stretch it. Okay, welcome back to the work session of the County Commissioners on February 24th. And we have a short agenda this afternoon. One item, prepping for the March 5th EOTC meeting, will be held next week when we have the packet for it, so we're not going to discuss that today unless, I guess we could talk about it in open discussion if somebody wants to talk about that. So we really just have and there are no memos of interest, so we just have the future agendas and open discussion to go. So Phyllis?
And I don't have anything for future agendas at this point. Here.
On the March 17th meeting, Tuesday, March 17th, I will not be present at that. I am going to the National Farmers Union Convention in Wichita. I'll be there that day, so. Anybody have anything else? Okay, open discussion items. Do you have anything, Phyllis?
I do not have anything in there either.
George?
I'm going to be applying for the BLM Resource Advisory Council. They've got a couple of seats open, and so they always ask for letters of support, so I would ask if the BOCC would send a letter of support for me applying for that, for a seat on the RAC. And I need to get that in the next couple of weeks.
Is that the committee that meets in Grand Junction at the BLM office there, or?
You know, they don't
Or do
really
you
have
know?
one set place that they meet. They meet 3-4 times a year, and they just move around throughout the Northwest region.
Different places. So you might be in Craig or Silt or Grand Junction or
I have no idea.
wherever. Okay. That would be awesome, George, if you could get on that.
So
Because,
whoever wants to compose that letter and they need some help in terms of what they're looking for, I can let whomever is composing that letter, and then the chair can sign it. You can give it to me, and then I'll include it with my application.
Okay. What's the deadline you have for getting it?
In a couple of weeks.
Okay, a couple weeks.
So if you get that information to us, staff can compose it, begin, and work with you.
Yeah, who should I send it to?
Send it to Susan.
Susan? Okay.
Okay. That's really great you're applying for that, George. You have anything, Michael? That's kind of a quiet meeting without Rachel and Patty here chiming in on everything. Okay, I guess we are finished for the day, and we will meet tomorrow at noon for the regular meeting. And thank you, Zach from Grassroots, and thank you, members of the press, for being here. Appreciate it.